Hi, Right Writers, Cruz here. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, we are going to be practicing or taking a look at the WorkKeys example problems in the graphic literacy test. And so I am here with the link that I've provided for you. And just click on the link and you should see basically the screen that I'm seeing. Now, what I want to do right now is to click on the WorkKeys Graphic Literacy Practice Test 1. And when I do that, it asks me if I want confirmation of test scores. And you can just hit continue, Right Writers, and it will record your score automatically. In this example, we are going to be looking at the practice test so that you can see different examples that the WorkKeys graphic literacy section provides for us. And that way you do not feel as if this is some sort of mystery that you're looking to uncover. Please keep in mind, Right Writers, that in this section, the test involves 38 questions and it still is the same time frame as far as 55 minutes. So rather than clicking on simulation, I'm going to go ahead and look at the practice. And again, there's also a learner option, but I'm going to go ahead and click on practice test and then start test. And then we can start to look at the different types of graphic literacy examples that they offer. So as you can see here, Right Writers, we just see sort of a grayscale bar graph that requires you to take a look at, and then it offers some questions connected to this particular graph. Then, if we scroll down, we look at what would be considered a table. And so we see a table with a lot of different information, and notice how, again, we've got some stars and some interesting graphics here that forces you to look at quite a bit more information with this particular graph and questions associated with it. As we scroll down, we see another table. In this case, it gives us days of the week, followed by on our y axis numbers. And so, again, we can see that some numbers are not filled. And so we understand if it jumps from 0 to 100, that this particular line represents 50, this one 150, then we've got 250, 350, 450, and then 550 and 650. And so again, this is part of the graphic literacy analysis. Then we click on the next key, and again, we see a bar graph, but this time it's different because we sort of see it from a side angle. And so here on the x axis, we start to see numbers representing or going all the way from 0 to 100, where the inventory is represented by colors. And those colors running along the what would be considered the y axis here, still going across the x axis, but they represent the colors represent different inventory examples such as phone chargers, ebook readers, flash drives, laptop computers. So again, different types of graphs. And then they want you to represent the same data with pie charts, which is again interesting because they're having you compare two different types of graphs or two different styles of graphs. As we scroll down and hit next, we can see again more bar graphs. This time, the number from 0 to 14 is represented on the y axis. Here on the x axis represents months, but then the colors represent different types of book genres almost, with thriller, romance, mystery, and fantasy. And again, Right Writers, notice how the amount of information keeps increasing, and then the numbers here represent book sales in $100 amounts. And so the complexity of the graph continues because more information is provided for the reader. As we click next, now we see sort of a line graph represented with numbers here and then years, followed by information represented annual revenue in 10 millions, and then represented profits and profits for the year in millions. and then earnings per share. And so representing, again, different amounts, which becomes more and more complex or a little bit more complicated. As we move on, we have a more complicated sort of table here with different amounts of information. We really have two tables here represented in this particular graph, followed by more questions. Again, another bar graph where you have to represent which of the following graphs correctly represents the same data, moving from a table into a bar graph. So, again, more complicated information as we move through the test questions. We see here a table with percentages followed by years. Then we have types of cars and the total units sold. So, again, another table, but notice how the amount of information, right, writers, has increased as we go on to different style questions. This one is quite interesting because we have essentially three different types of graphs where we have insect families represented in visual form on a table, but then also gestation times. Then we've got geographic levels and number of cases. So, again, notice how the amount of information increases as we continue on with the test. Then we move on to more test questions. Here we have a different type of graph comparing age levels between Montana and California. Again, different type of graph, population in 100,000s. And then we move on to another example. Here we have sort of a line graph, but this is representing gas levels in milliliters with the color coding, the purple representing oxygen in this case, and then CO2 or carbon dioxide. And then we have time in hours represented here. Notice how the types of graph change. And then we have, in this case, an example where they have both pie chart bar graphs representing the graph up above. So again, notice the complexity as we continue. Then in this one, we have what would be considered the financial development plan. We have color coding, we have years, we have, in this case, dollar amounts represented in the millions. And then we also have, again, revenue, expenses, and net assets. So, again, forcing you to look at a table, but then also on figure two, we also have projections in a table format. So this representing a bar graph, and then we've got a table associated with it. Notice again the complexity of the questions. This one is a pretty large table here with a lot of data and information, followed by a second table with data and information. Again, the complexity continues, right, writers? Then we move on in the graphic literacy practice test. We have, again, sort of a line graph with different countries represented here, where we have Chile, Denmark, OECD members, and Estonia represented. And again, a little bit challenging to read. We see the years down here at the bottom. You would need to zoom in to see that for the graph. And so you would want to do that as you were taking the test. As we continue on, right, writers, again, another table, more information. And then we have a more complex style graph to analyze within the tables here of, metals and toxic levels and the health impacts, followed by more information connected with the health impacts of these metals. Then we move on to more questions, right, writers? Here we have monthly rainfall and temperatures. Notice how we've got sort of a line graph here, followed by a bar graph underneath temperatures. And then we have it here represented almost sort of in a line graph style. And we've got temperature and time frames provided here in different hours. Again, more complex, more complicated as we move through the test. And then at the end, with the graphic literacy test, we have a conference center floor plan where we have a huge luncheon and we've got different table sizes, rectangle table sizes, circular tables, and we're supposed to be, it looks like, even a kitchen, coffee tables, tents, and we've got tables associated and price points with those tables for the seating chart. And it becomes, again, much more complicated as we get to the end, right, writers, in looking at these questions with graphic literacy. So, definitely all types of styles of tables, right, writers, as we progress in questions, they provide more and more information. And so, really, what they're expecting is for mistakes to happen along the way as you're trying to compare multiple graphs within a certain amount of time. And so, right, writers, I leave you with, again, just kind of a quick overview at the different types of graphs that you might see in a graphic literacy test. And again, this um, website provides definitely a practice test one. And I noticed when I took the graphic literacy practice test one and I completed it, they actually had a graphic literacy practice test two. And so you can take multiple practice tests within this particular website. Again, I only did the first practice test, but you are more than welcome to take more than one to, again, try to hit that level gold or that level platinum. The platinum level pretty much hits a level 6 and level 7 on the ACT WorkKeys test for graphic literacy. But if you hit the gold, then you're hitting level 5 or better. Take care, right, writers. Have a great rest of your week. And I hope, again, just reviewing these different graphs help you and encourage you to take these practice tests. All right. Looking forward to seeing you next week. And we'll take a look at the math section and just, again, get a brief overview as to what are the expectations with the ACT work keys. All right, right, writers. Love you guys. Take care. Thanks again for being here and for subscribing. Bye bye.